In the quiet of the night, a man's burdens felt heavier. He found a moment of shared humanity in the shadows. But instead of taking the money, the homeless man placed an old silver coin in Daniel's hand.
Don't sell this coin. Tomorrow morning, read what's written on the back.
Daniel examined the coin. On it was a strange symbol he remembered seeing years ago in his father's office. Daniel couldn't understand how a homeless man could know anything about his father. The next morning, he carefully examined the coin. Along its edge, he discovered a small engraved number. Daniel searched through his father's old business records for that number. What he found changed everything. The number led Daniel to an old business file created 30 years earlier. Inside, he discovered an old agreement. His father had legally secured an important portion of the company's ownership in someone else's name, but that information was missing from the company's current records. Daniel realized someone may have deliberately removed the documents, and suddenly, the company's financial crisis began to look very different.
Daniel went looking for the homeless man. At first, the man refused to explain anything. Then he gave Daniel a name,
Thomas Reed. Daniel was stunned. Thomas Reed was his father's former business partner. Growing up, Daniel had always been told that Thomas betrayed his father and abandoned the company. But the truth was completely different.
Thomas never betrayed the company. He had actually protected Daniel's father from a major business fraud. But in doing so, Thomas lost almost everything.
His reputation was destroyed, his finances collapsed, and he eventually became homeless. One day, I'll make things right.
But after Daniel's father unexpectedly died, that promise was never fulfilled. The silver coin was never magical.
It was a symbol of trust between Daniel's father and Thomas. Decades earlier, they had agreed that if the company ever faced serious danger,
whoever possessed the coin would be someone whose warning had to be taken seriously.
Thomas gave the coin to Daniel because he knew the company's current crisis was connected to the same fraud that had nearly destroyed the business years ago. Daniel followed Thomas's information and began investigating the company's financial records. Eventually, he discovered that someone had been secretly attempting to take control of the company. Daniel gathered the evidence and exposed the fraud. Instead of selling the business, he saved it. The company survived, and dozens of employees kept their jobs. Daniel tracked Thomas down and offered him a position back at the company.
I didn't save your business, Daniel. Your father did. I was only keeping his promise.
Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Keep it. Your father gave it to me once. Now you know why. Daniel finally understood that sometimes the most valuable thing a person possesses isn't money. It is trust, loyalty, and the courage to protect the truth.
And the homeless man Daniel once saw as a complete stranger turned out to be his father's oldest friend and the true protector of his family's business.
But Thomas's warning had only opened the door to a much bigger mystery. Daniel went back through the company's records. For the next several hours, Daniel compared invoices, bank statements, and payment records. Then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. Daniel traced the payments back to one company account. Then he checked the dates. They had started only months after his father died, and they had continued quietly ever since. Then Daniel found something even more disturbing. The suspicious payments had been approved by someone inside the company, someone he had trusted for years. Daniel checked the signature against the company's older records. It matched. Someone inside his own company had been helping move the money. Daniel searched through the oldest files in the company. Behind a stack of forgotten documents, he found a hidden... Inside were copies of the ownership papers that had mysteriously disappeared from the official records. The original papers showed that Daniel's father had protected a major share of the company, but the current records told a completely different... Someone had deliberately changed the ownership information. Then Daniel noticed something that connected everything. The same executive who had approved the suspicious payments had also signed the altered ownership documents. Daniel now had enough evidence to know this wasn't a simple accounting mistake. Someone had been taking control of his family's company for years. But before he confronted anyone, Daniel needed one more piece of proof.
Daniel knew there was only one person who might understand what he was about to uncover. The next morning, he went back to Thomas. And this time, he needed the whole truth.
When Daniel showed Thomas the missing ownership papers, Thomas recognized them immediately. He had seen those documents 30 years earlier. Thomas finally remembered the name of the man who had pressured Daniel's father 30 years ago. And when he said the name, Daniel realized the same family was still connected to his company. The name on the document belonged to the family behind Daniel's most powerful competitor. Daniel suddenly understood. The financial pressure on his company was not a coincidence. Someone had been trying to force him to sell. For the first time, Daniel could see the entire plan. They had manipulated the records, drained the company financially, and waited for Daniel to become desperate enough to sell. But now Daniel had the evidence, and he wasn't going to let them win. The company's records for years. Daniel needed to make sure they couldn't destroy the evidence before he acted. Daniel made copies of every important document and secured the originals. This time, there would be no missing records, no altered papers, and no way for anyone to erase the truth. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting. He invited the executives, the financial officers, and the people who had spent months telling him that selling the company was his only option. The room fell silent as Daniel placed the documents on the table. For years, he had trusted the people sitting across from him. But now, he was about to show them exactly what he had discovered. Daniel revealed the altered ownership records, the suspicious payments, and the missing documents. Piece by piece, the truth began to appear. The company's financial crisis had never been an accident. Then Daniel revealed the final piece of evidence. It connected the altered ownership records directly to the suspicious payment and exposed the person inside the company who had helped make it happen. The evidence was undeniable. The senior executive had secretly worked with Daniel's competitor, manipulating company records and draining the business to force Daniel into selling. The man Daniel had trusted for years had betrayed him, but the betrayal had finally been exposed, and the plan to take control of Daniel's company had failed. With the fraud exposed, the sale was stopped. The company survived, and for the first time in months, the factory was filled with hope instead of fear. I didn't save your business, Daniel. Your father did. I was only keeping his promise. Daniel tried to give the silver coin back to Thomas, but Thomas refused. Keep it. Your father gave it to me once. Now you know why. Daniel finally understood that sometimes the most valuable thing a person possesses isn't money. It is trust, loyalty, and the courage to protect the truth.
And the homeless man Daniel once saw as a complete stranger turned out to be his father's oldest friend and the true protector of his family's business.
Daniel had spent years believing that his father's greatest legacy was the company he left behind. But now he finally understood the truth. His father's greatest legacy wasn't the business. It was the people who stayed loyal when everything else was falling apart.
Some promises are worth more than money. Some friendships survive time, loss, and hardship.
And sometimes, the person you least expect becomes the one who saves everything. Sometimes the greatest treasures in life aren't the things we own. They're the promises we keep and the people who never give up on us. If this story touched your heart, remember this. True loyalty is one of the greatest treasures a person can ever have.
Please like this video and subscribe to Beyond the Moment for more unforgettable stories.